Croeso, welcome and thanks for joining us today. This is the succession planning masterclass that we're delivering on behalf of Tyfu Cymru. It's a recorded podcast that's available exclusively through the Tyfu Cymru online knowledge hub. So this session is all about helping you plan for change when you or an important member of your team decide to leave the business. And it's all about helping you to consider some quick and practical actions that you can take to manage that change and deal with that change as and when it happens. So it's about being prepared in essence. Now, this is one in a series of bite-sized online sessions that we're running as part of the Horticulture Leaders Forum. Essentially, the Leaders Forum consists of a series of masterclasses and expert panel debates, as well as one-to-one mentoring by our expert business coaches. And I'm delighted to be joined by Iain Williams, who'll lead today's session. Iain is a leading financial and business development training consultant, an experienced business coach. He's over 20 years experience with the banking sector and has worked across lots of different business sectors, both with small companies and with multinationals. And I guess essentially this means that he can help your business to take action to grow and develop in the right way. So I'm very much looking forward to finding out more from Iain today. But before I pass over to him, I'd just like to say very quickly that if you'd like to set up a one-to-one mentoring session with Iain, or indeed with any of our other mentors that are part of the Leaders Forum, then please drop us an email to let us know. This offer of mentoring is, of course, time-bound and subject to availability. So I'm going to pass over to Iain now. And I think perhaps the first question that is perhaps pertinent to this is, what is succession planning? Over to you, Iain.
Right, great, thanks. I'm going to share some slides then, if I may, just before we start. So yeah, great question. Maybe just to kind of pick upon something you said in the introduction. Because for me, this is not really about waiting until somebody leaves. This is putting plans in place before that actually happens, and we'll kind of talk about that. But yeah, succession planning. I mean, you may feel that for the type of business that you have, this isn't appropriate. This is really for bigger businesses with great big HR processes and teams in there, but it isn't the case. This is for any kind of business at any stage that they're in, whether you're starting out, whether you're growing a business or looking to expand. This applies to you and your team. So this is a brief introduction. I mean, Iain's already done a very kind introduction of me. So again, just very briefly, I worked in banking for many, many years. I set up my own learning and development company in 2013. And since then, I've been helping out small businesses, medium-sized businesses and multinationals with a variety of training, business development and finance, and so on. So there we go. So objectives today is really just to give you a feel for what succession planning is and how it impacts upon your business. So just the importance of it. Explain a little bit more about succession planning. So this isn't really about individuals. This is about looking at what critical roles are in your business and understanding why that is important. Helping you put together a succession plan, and we'll explain that in a little bit more detail as we go along, and then how you communicate that plan to the rest of your team and make sure that it's embedded within your organization and works for you. So some of the topics we're going to look at are just specifically what is succession planning, the benefits to your business for putting these kind of plans in place, equally the downsides of not putting these plans in place, a very simple succession planning model just to kind of help you get started, and then some best practice on the back of that as well. So those are the topics. So as I say, we're going to look at what succession planning is and what it isn't, how succession planning can positively impact your business, some of the downsides and pitfalls of not putting those plans in place, both for you, your business, and your employees, a really simple 4 key step succession plan, and then the considerations for how that then works within your business. This really is the importance of this. I kind of overstate this. You know, you as a business owner will be sitting there So many things you have to consider on a day-to-day. It's how your team is set up, what the external environment looks like, some of the pressures on you at this moment in time, some of the key things that you need to think about. Who runs your business alongside you? What's the competition like? Where do we take our business? How do we grow our business? What new markets do we look for? Who are our key customers and key suppliers, and how do we keep on top of those all the time? How do we actually operate our business, and what are the financial impacts of that? So all these things going on all the time. So much more for one individual to cope with. This is why you start bringing people into your team, and why you start trusting other employees to do things. But the danger is, if you don't keep on top of that, and if you don't continue to invest in your employees, that they leave, and that could have a dramatic impact on your business. And that's really what succession planning is about, to kind of stop those negative impacts on your business should employees leave. So very briefly, what is succession planning? So succession planning is about identifying talent within your business and identifying business critical roles in your business, so that you kind of put in place a kind of continuity plan. So things just happen seamlessly. There's a plan in place so that if one employee leaves, another employee can step up almost simultaneously and just take on that role. You can read on there some statistics, but effectively, this is something that very rarely happens in a family-owned business. It's not quite the same sector, but I'm working with a doctor's surgery at the moment where they have a practice manager, and that practice manager has been in place for 15 years. They effectively run that surgery. Now, they've just given notice to retire, and all of a sudden the practice is really struggling to recruit a new practice manager in. And the danger is then, when this individual leaves in, I think it's about a week or 2 weeks time, all of their knowledge, all of their skills go with them. And then this practice just has nowhere to go, because what they didn't think about was the planning that was needed to cover the eventuality of that employee leaving. And now they've got no one who can run payroll. They've got no one who can sort their files out properly. They've got no one who liaises with the NHS like this practice manager did, because they didn't foresee this individual leaving and put the plans in place to make sure that when that did happen, someone else could step up. And that is effectively what succession planning is. So I say it's not really about the individual, it's about the role. It's identifying within your business, what are the key critical roles? And that doesn't necessarily mean one particular role. It could be a certain aspect of a particular role. But what is key in your business? What absolutely has to happen, and who can do that? And what happens if those individuals aren't around for anymore? That is why you need a succession plan. So it's looking about what is vital in your business to gives it that competitive edge. It is about developing talent. This is about looking at your internal team and thinking about who could be the leaders of the future, who could step up, and what do we need to do to make sure that that can happen. It is about ensuring, as I said, that continuity, so that when somebody leaves, there's somebody already qualified to take place. So effectively what you've got then is a pool of employees that could potentially step up into a leadership role as and when the case is needed. So, what are the
good,
sorry, yes.
If I can just butt in there, it's really good, Evan. An interesting sort of take on this sort of management of this process of change within a business. And I think that, you know, obviously each business is different. Each business will face different challenges. And I guess in the kind of in the horticulture world, I mean, some of the skills that are required are all about, you know, understanding the best ways of growing different produce, and the right times to do that, and that can take quite a long time to nurture and understand and get a kind of grasp of that. I mean, what sort of, I guess it's so in the context of someone moving on from a business, which happens all the time, and somebody new coming in and stepping into that role, what sort of time transition do you think is sort of critical to allow for that? I mean, is it just a case of as much time as possible, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mean, if I was running a business with a team now, I would start that process now. And yeah, you're right. And just to make this clear, this isn't about skills training, because that has to happen within the business anyway. This is more about thinking of the role and the capabilities that an individual requires to run that role. So this is like the soft skills of how to manage people, how to talk to people, how to effectively lead people, how to run meetings, how to talk to customers and liaise with customers and grow a customer base. So yeah, I think the earlier you can start on this process, the better. Because what you don't want to be is in the case of that doctor surgery of you've got a month to sort out a replacement, because that is not enough time to find out who within my team has the capabilities to step up. How do I identify that individual and how do I train them so that in 4 weeks time they can just step into that role and my business continues as it is? Because the danger of not doing that, as I said, is potentially there's increased costs, there's downtime, there's disruption to your customers. And once you have a customer that feels dissatisfied with the service they get from you, they will look at the competition and they will buy from the competition, and it's very difficult to get them back. So I think if you're running a team at the moment, this is something I would look to implement as soon as possible.
So, thanks, Evan.
Answer the question. Yeah, great. Okay. So, I mean, I kind of alluded there to some of the benefits of succession planning, but so yeah, this is not all about filling a future role. This is about potentially saving you money. If you think about that recruitment process, so yeah, you've got a week or a month to find a new employee. Well, you know, there can be some considerable costs involved in that, spending on recruitment, onboarding, training, trying to find somebody out there that can come in and just step into this role. There's potential downtime to your business whilst you find that individual and train them up to be able to take on that role. So this is not about skills training. This is about some of those softer skills that you have as a leader or a line manager or whatever you want to call it, a team leader. But they will have certain skills and capabilities that you will lose if you haven't already paved the way for someone to come in behind them and step up to that role. So there's a considerable impact on your business of not doing that. So you can save some of that impact by putting in plan a succession plan. Now, I said many of you probably don't have HR functions, so this isn't really, this is something that applies to any type of business, whether you've got a HR department or not. I mean, if it's just you running a small team, then this lands on your shoulders. And you must know how difficult it is at the moment to recruit people. It's very difficult to kind of find the right individuals in the location, offer the right kind of benefits and pay to them. So much better if you can work with your existing team and look at who is showing the right kind of capabilities and bring them on. Start to invest in them now so that when they need to step up, they've got the skills, the competencies, the capabilities and the confidence to be able to do so. So you've got no lengthy vacancies. And great for your staff because they can see that you are investing in them and they feel good about that as well. You do appeal to an external workforce then. So I said it's difficult to recruit people at this moment in time, but if they can see that you are a business that invests in their employees and you are prepared to put the time and effort into to develop their employees, then you appeal more to that external workforce. So that is a great thing for you to do at this moment in time when it is very difficult to fill roles in. And then your employees, as I mentioned, just feel great about themselves. If you as an employer find the time to invest in them, you are saying to them, I believe in you. I believe you can step up and you can be the team leader. You can be the line manager. You can be the next manager of this business. I mean, just think how great they will feel about themselves. And then that feeling then kind of radiates down amongst all the other employees who also want a piece of that as well. So they try a little bit harder and they want to get involved in this program. So there are massive amounts of benefits, not only to your business from a cost point of view, but just your business as a whole, appealing to the external workforce and your existing employees feel good about themselves as well. So yeah, so this is not about focusing on the individual. This is about focusing on roles or tasks that need to be happening that are absolutely critical to your business and making sure that there's a clear career path for employees that join your business from day one. They know that if they want to progress in your business, there is a plan in place that will help and support and get them there should that need be. Just pause for a quick drink. Yes.
Yeah, Evan, it's good point to point. I mean, one of the points you mentioned there, which I think is absolutely critical to commercial horticulture businesses, is about labour and about finding good people.
Yeah.
And of course, there's this particular moment in time, there's an acute challenge with regards to recruitment of good staff and
Yes.
retainment of good staff and good
Yeah.
people that can, that can fill these roles. So from what I understand from what you mentioned there, would you suggest then that having a succession plan in place, whereby you're sort of investing in staff and so on and so forth, you think that would be good for some of these family businesses, some of these small companies that are facing some of these challenges with recruitment and labour shortages, to kind of invest in their staff and make this, I guess, give people a role where they feel valued and so on and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's two benefits to that. So one, your existing workforce are likely to stay with you then, rather than become dissatisfied with the work that they're doing and look for opportunities elsewhere. Because if they believe that they are trusted by you, and you are investing not only cost, so a salary, but you're investing time and effort in them, and you are saying to them, I trust you to move on in this business. I trust you to be a future leader of this business. I mean, that's great for your existing workforce. And then they talk to their friends and they talk to their family and they talk to other people outside of your organization and say, I'm working for a place that believes in me and is investing in me. So that maybe encourages other people to look to take an opportunity with you. And when if you are having to recruit externally, then this is a great thing that you can bring out in an interview, is that you're not only thinking about bringing somebody in, teaching them the technical skills that they need, but you are also, if they are the right candidate, you will be looking to develop them again as a leader. So you'll be looking at their capabilities and investing in training plans and coaching and mentoring just to make them a better person. So I think two benefits. Internally, it helps with retaining staff. If you will show that there's a program in place that you want to bring them on as individuals, and to the external workforce, it shows that you are a forthright and forward-thinking individual that is prepared to invest in employees, doesn't just see them as a commodity, doesn't just see them as a cost, but sees them as absolutely key and critical to the growth and success of the business, and you're prepared to invest in them.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, great. So we talked there briefly just about the benefits. So some of the risks, again, we kind of covered, but yeah, if you think about all of that knowledge, all of those skills, all of that time that you've invested in individuals, if they go, that can potentially be lost to that business. So the more that you can encourage people to stay within your organization, the better, because that's very difficult to get an individual in and to get them up to that kind of level of skills and knowledge of the person leaving. That takes time and effort and costs, and there could be lots of disruption along the way. You've got the time that you have to invest to get that new successor up to speed, getting them familiar with the business and the way that the business works and the practices, and knowing the individuals and all the way that they work and the way that they react to people. All of that takes time. Whereas if you've spent the time on your existing workforce, you've already primed them to step up, then so much better. There is a danger if you're rushing to appoint a successor, that maybe you just appoint the wrong person. They just don't have the skills or the training necessary to be able to take on that role. Or maybe it just isn't something that interests them and they're just purely motivated by the increase in salary or maybe prestige that they see the role gives them, but maybe they're just not the right kind of person for that role. And again, the impact then is on your business. If they're not the right kind of person, then that kind of transmits down to your rest of your employees, or that transmits to your customer base or to your suppliers, and that could potentially be harming those relationships as well. So again, so much better if you've spent the time to identify the individuals that you believe can step up, and you've invested the time and effort in them as individuals. So there is potential for disruption, as I've mentioned, to the way that you work, to the way that work flows in and out of your business, and to those dissatisfied customers, and all of those costs that come along with recruitment. So it's advertising, it's recruitment, it's days out interviewing, it's potentially having people come in on trials and how that works. So disruption to the business, increased costs, potentially having individuals in a role that they aren't suited for, that demotivates them, that potentially demotivates the team, that impacts then on the relationships with customers and suppliers. So this might seem like a thing that maybe isn't needed, but I guarantee those that do think about these kind of things and do put in place plans to make sure that existing employees can move up and can step up are generally the most successful businesses that I come across.
Can I just jump in with a quick question? I guess it's fair to say that it's not uncommon for some small businesses to say, well, and maybe you've had experience that they've invested time and money in a member of staff, and then that member of staff goes, thanks very much, I'm going to go and work somewhere else now and take those skills with me. What would your thoughts be in and around that? Because that's a challenge for any business, I guess, but particularly a small business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's difficult because there are limits to what you can do with that. I mean, certainly contracts of employment are an absolute must. You mentioned I've done a lot of work with a lot of businesses. I'd probably say 20 to 30% of the small businesses I've worked with don't have contracts of employment in place, which I just still, even to this day, found staggering. But so that helps both you and the employee, so that if you know that, for instance, there's a certain notice period that needs to be given before somebody leaves, at least that gives you and as an employee, an employer, opportunity to find a replacement. So that's absolutely critical. There are ways that you can build into these contracts as well. If you're investing a cost in this training process, in this succession planning, then you can recover some of that cost potentially with a clawback clause in the contract of employment when they leave. So you'll say, I've spent £2,000 on training you over the last couple of months. Well, 50% of that now needs to be repaid if you leave the business. That's a possibility, although that's maybe sounds a little bit draconian. I mean, I think all you can say is if you do this process properly. So I'm talking a little bit about favoritism and how that can impact on succession planning. So I think if you do this process properly and you don't just pick the person that you likes for this process, you look at what competencies are needed, and then you look at your employees and see who is displaying those competencies and has the best potential to reach the kind of position that you're training them for, then I think they're more likely to stay. There is a danger then that you put this plan in place, but the role that you anticipate them going for doesn't become vacant for 10 years or so. Well, in that case, you might need to rethink your strategy then, because there's a danger then that they become frustrated and then do move on. So timing of when this happens is quite key as well. But I think as an employee, the more that I feel my employer values my opinion, shows faith in me and invests in me, the more likely I am to stick around.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, so we looked very briefly at what succession planning is, some of the benefits and some of the risks. So now, I mean, you could spend hours, days, months, years on this. So I thought I'd just run through a very simple model, just some of the things that you can consider putting in place now, regardless of the size of your business, regardless of where your business is in terms of its marketplace at the moment, whatever strategy you're looking to implement. So 4 key steps. So we're talking about development of talent and what you need to do to help that come along. And we'll look at these in more detail in a minute. It's about identifying leadership talent. So that's about what does a leader look like in your business. It's then making sure that then those leaders are trained and how you get feedback on their progress, and making sure that whoever's in management team at the moment kind of buy into the whole process. So if we look at those in a little bit more detail, so development of talent here, what I'm talking about is taking that long-term view. So as I mentioned, this might not be a position that's going to be free for 2-3 years time, but it's thinking now about who do you want in that role, what kind of skills do they need to display, and we're not only talking about technical skills but soft skills like negotiations, like talking to a team, like leading a team, like relationship building. So what kind of soft skills do they need, and putting in place now a development plan for the individual that you highlight for this role. So thinking now about this vacancy might become free in 2 years time. What do I need to do now to make sure that I can bring an individual along so that in 2 years time, when that vacancy is there, they can just step into that role. So that can be a combination of training courses, developing leadership competencies through other training courses. Job rotation is a really great one. So move individuals around different roles within your team and your business so that everyone gets a feel for what goes on. And stretch these individuals as well with challenging assignments. Don't just expect them to come in day to day and do the same thing. Give them something else to do. Stretch these individuals. Give them something out of the ordinary to do that they wouldn't normally expect to do, and see how they respond to that. So it is about thinking about, I say, it's the profile of the position, not the individual. So what's your ideal criteria for a role, whatever that role may be, the one that you've identified as critical to your business? What does the best individual look like in that role? So thinking about that, sketching that out, and then how would you take an individual and turn them into that ideal leadership profile? What skills do they need? How do I get them those skills? And then as they go through that development program, how do you capture feedback on that? Who do you involve in that? And what kind of benchmarks will you set that you expect to see some progress towards? Developing the leaders then. So this is all about those training programs, development programs, working on those competencies, encouraging them to talk to other leaders, both in your organization and wider as well. So networking is really key here. So encourage those employees in your business to go out and talk to other employees in other businesses and similar businesses, and talk about how they run their business, talk about the competencies that they have that they found really work well in their business, and get them kind of networking with others. I mean, great if your organization as well, you can provide coaching opportunities or mentors. So if you've got a key role, so I'm just mentioning it just for ease, that doctor's practice and that practice manager, what they should have done was a couple of years ago, identify maybe 2 or 3 individuals that could potentially be a practice manager and get them shadowing the existing practice manager now, so they can see what she does. You can see the tasks that she performs day to day. She can see how she talks to patients, the doctors, and the NHS providers, and they get a feel for what that job is like now and whether they can step up to that. You can do that with holiday cover. You can do it with day-to-day duties, but you can get these people involved now. So you need to think about how we've got this great plan. So this is what we want. This is the kind of individual that we want. So how do we make that happen now? What do we expose them to at this stage? And I say, making the existing management team and getting their buy-in to that now is really great as well, so they can support those potential candidates. I mean, it might seem a bit unusual for someone in a particular key role to then have somebody kind of come along and say, right, in 2 years' time, I want your job. I want to train for your job. But I've done that on many occasions. I worked 25 years for the bank. I don't think there was a single role that I had where I wasn't, as well as carrying out the role that I did, I wasn't training others so that then when I moved on, they could come and step up and do that. And I was just happy to do that. So try and find those individuals within your team that are happy to support you and happy to support potential candidates as they go along. I would say, and I said, just be mindful of when you implement this. You're only going to have some very frustrated employees if you start them on this program, but 10 years time, that opportunity hasn't presented itself, because then they will start to think about leaving. Then they will start to think about taking their skills to a potential competitor of yours. So timing of this is quite critical. So if you can, I always encourage every business owner to kind of sketch out a timeline. So maybe 3-5 years time, where they would like to be and the steps that they need to take now to get there. So as part of that, succession planning should form part of that. So in 5 years time, if they're looking to really grow the business, double the size of the team, take on an existing unit, buy some extra acreage to grow some new crops. So what do we need to put in place now to ensure that in 5 years time, that's in place? That could also involve bringing some new people into the business, but equally looking at who's already in the business and what skills do I need from those individuals in 5 years time to really grow this business. So I'm going to invest in those skills and that training of those individuals now, so that in 5 years time, this doesn't become an issue. They just step into the role and they take the business on. So doing that now is absolutely critical. So yeah, 4 key steps that you can take, really quite a kind of simple succession planning model.
Thanks, Evan. I just thinking there. I mean, it's maybe perhaps something I should perhaps ask more towards the end of this. But
Okay.
I think what's interesting, maybe as a takeaway for the guys that are going to watch this podcast is there one thing that they can do now, or maybe 1 or 2 things they can do now, with regards to this stuff, and if so, what would they be? Would you say, if you could sort of say, oh, do this now, that would be a great thing to do?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the first thing is, well, there's probably a couple of things. So that forward-looking piece, I think, is absolutely critical. You can continue to run a business day to day. There's nothing wrong with that. So you come in, you look at what's needed on the day, you do that, and you move on. You come in the next day and you do that and you move on. Nothing wrong with that. I work with many business owners that do exactly that. There are those business owners, though, that look towards the future and say, yeah, this is fine as we are at the moment, but actually in 3-5 years time, we want to be here. We want to move up a level. We want to grow our business. We want our business to expand. So having an idea of what you want to do in the future is key, because then you can start to put steps in place to make that happen. So that could well be around recruitment. It could well be around training. So I think having a clear vision of where you want your business to go to is critical. Then the next thing is looking at what are the key critical skills I need employees to have to take me to that level. So that's when you start to think about succession planning. So thinking about, I need someone to demonstrate this capability. I need someone who's really good at bringing a team together. I need someone that's a really good communicator. I need someone that's really good at leadership. I need somebody that's really good at negotiating with my employees, negotiating with suppliers, and negotiating with customers. Now, it's really difficult to find those individuals. So if you know that is the kind of individual that you want, you can look at your pool of existing employees, look at 2 or 3 that have potential to be that individual, and start implementing that training now. So I think having a clear vision of where you want to take the business is your first step. Looking at the key critical roles then that are needed in your business to get you to that level, and then putting in place the training now to train those individuals so that you're not reacting in 5 years' time. It's just a seamless transition to take you to that level.
Great, thanks, Evan.
Okay. So yeah, some best practice things to consider as we go along. So I say we talk a lot about succession planning, but really I just mean just put some plans in place. Just think about what you want your future of the business to be, and just kind of just map that out. Just have an idea of where you want to be. So kind of commit it to paper effectively. Don't just have this in your head. Commit it to paper. So what do you want the business to be? Where do you want to take it? Who do you need involved in that? Who do you need to call upon? And how will all of this be monitored and tracked? Have these discussions now. Don't wait until a key individual leaves a key role, because it's probably too late then. So try and mitigate some of those risks now by looking at employment contracts, looking at the key roles, looking at your existing workforce and see who has the capability to potentially move on. It's always difficult. You can't anticipate absolutely everything, but have a think about now, what happened if that individual, or there was nobody in my team that could perform that key critical role? What impact would that have on my business? And that impact is likely to be an increased cost or a loss of sales. So nobody wants that. So what can I do now to mitigate that as best that I can? I mentioned there about critical roles. So it is having to think about that role and thinking about what skills are needed. And with those skills, how can I develop those skills within my existing team? So what is the role? What are the skills that they need? How do I get them involved now in the work that could develop those skills? And at the end of the day, it's only going to develop and benefit your business if you can get them involved now to do that. Talk to your existing employees. Say that you want to put in place this kind of plan that will help and develop them and ensure that they are ready to take on critical roles in the future. So get their involvement. Talk about training opportunities. Talk about mentoring. Talk about coaching. A lot of what I've talked about may sound like it comes with a cost, but it doesn't. As I say, if you can just sit existing employees alongside some of the more senior members of your team and say not really about technical skills, but more about how they do their job, how they talk to individuals. You can just get existing employees observing existing employees. That doesn't come at any cost at all. You can get existing employees coaching other employees. That doesn't come at a cost at all. So there are lots of things that you can do here that don't come at a cost. It is about, looking at your employees and thinking who has got the potential to grow. And I can not invest in these individuals, and that might be fine, but you run the risk that they then find a better paid position and a better job that offers them better opportunities elsewhere. They go and you lose their skills and knowledge. So think about who within your team you could potentially bring on, who would really benefit your business by staying around and you investing in them. This is all about trying to reduce disruption to your business and your employees as much as you can. But I think the key thing, which I've mentioned now a couple of times, is knowing where you want to take your business. I've mentioned there's nothing wrong with just day-to-day managing the business, but the danger with that is you lose opportunities or you miss opportunities. There's a danger that customers don't feel like customers anymore. They just feel like revenue generators because you're not engaging with them, because you're just running day-to-day the business. So the more that you can look up and the more that you can step back and think about, what do I want to do with my business? Where do I want to take it? How do I want this business to grow? The better. And then when you've got a clear idea of what your vision is for your business, then you can start to put some plans in place. So that might involve recruiting more people, but it might involve looking at your existing workforce and thinking, right, these individuals, what I've seen of them day to day, they look like they could do more. So I'm going to invest some time and effort into developing these individuals so that when I want to grow my business, I can lean on these individuals to help me do that. That's really what succession planning is all about. So in summary, you cannot do any of this, and that is absolutely fine. But you do run the risk of people leaving, and when they leave, they take that knowledge with them that you may never recover. You run the risk of appointing a successor who is really not quite right for your business. And the downside of that is they become unhappy, they don't work effectively. The people below them become unhappy, they don't work effectively. Customers feel that unhappiness. They go and look for other suppliers. Suppliers that work with you don't want to supply you anymore. So there are some massive downsides of not doing this. The time it takes to set up a new successor in a key role, I mean, that's a significant amount of time and effort you have to invest in a very short term if you've not planned for this. If you've done this over 2 to 3 years, it's just a seamless process. Just that continuity of employment is just there. So you don't have that disruption to your workflow, to your protocols, to your processes. That just isn't something that happens. And you don't lose those sales, your costs aren't increased, and you don't lose those customers. So some significant benefits to succession planning. Don't think about this as only those big businesses with big HR departments. It's only something that concerns you as a employer of 2 employees up to a team of 10. This applies across the board. The more you can invest in your employees now, the more they'll stick around, the greater chances you have of your business being successful. So as I said, this is something that impacts on day to day. This is about something you need to think about. So I could very easily add into those 8 subjects there, the 9th one being succession planning, because how you plan your business impacts upon whether you're going to be around in 3 to 5 years' time, how your management team will look, the strategy that you will take. You'll be bringing on new customers and new suppliers. Your operations will be seamlessly, and that will show itself in increased revenue and reduced costs. So it's an absolutely key, critical business process. So that's kind of the end of the formal presentation. We've had obviously a couple of questions as we go along. Were there any other additional questions or queries that I could deal with now?
I think that was a great session, Evan, both fascinating and informative, and there's lots of practical stuff to take away and apply to our own businesses. I mean, I think that I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions over time with people viewing this online, but I think one of the things, again, that all small businesses, myself included, are challenged with, particularly in the horticulture sector, is time. Everything is, we're all time poor in many ways. And any thoughts or practical tips around, clearly this stuff is important, but when we set it up against, let's say other challenges, other potential priorities, and so on that some of these businesses are facing, how do you sort of suggest that we make time to do this sort of stuff? What do you think? What would be a good way of doing that?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think probably for me, because I don't think you can't create time, unless we all become Doctor Who and find a TARDIS at the back of our garden. There is only so much time that we've got in a working day. So, but for me, this is more about it's a change of mindset. So you go into work and you run your business, and you believe what are the critical things to do, and this might seem like not a critical thing to do, but actually, if you stop that mindset and think that this is absolutely key and critical to my business, if I don't invest in my employees and give them the time and space to be able to develop, then potentially there is no future for my business, because either my existing employees will go because they don't see an opportunity to progress. They don't feel like they're invested in. They don't feel trusted. So they will go to a place where they do feel that. Then that impacts upon your ability to provide your service or your product. If you can't provide your service or your product, then that means customers become dissatisfied. Customers will look at the competition to get what they are currently getting from you. So for me, this is more about thinking this is an absolutely key, critical part of my job. So every day I should be talking to my employees about ways that I can help and develop them. Every day I should be encouraging employees to rotate round other departments or other specialities or other activities within my team, and just observing how others do that role. Now, it doesn't have to be for long. It can just be for half an hour a day. It can just be for an hour a day. But just getting them think more about their own role and think about other roles within the business is going to be a great help. So, yeah, you can't carve any more time out of the day, but it's about just doing things a little bit differently. It's about thinking of this as not an add-on, but thinking of this is absolutely critical. So finding ways within the day to bring individuals on, whether that's job rotation, holiday cover, coaching, mentoring, over lunch hour, setting up some kind of networking event, whatever it may well be. I mean, it might sound, again, counterintuitive, but team events away from the organization are a really great way to start this, because individuals might talk to an employee within your company that they've never really spoken to before outside of the context of the business environment. So just going for a drink after work can start this process, because they'll talk to that individual, become interested in the role that they do, and now you've got someone who's invested. Now you've got someone that you can invest time and money in to potentially train for that. So yeah, so I can't offer anything that will carve out more time in your day, but I think this is a mindset thing. I think if you don't think that this is important, you won't make it happen. If you believe that growing your business is important, and the way that you want to grow your business is to invest in your employees, then you will find a way to make this happen.
That's great, Evan. Thank you very much for that.
Okay.
I mean, I think really, it clearly is important, and it clearly is something that, a lot of businesses perhaps haven't formalized and haven't thought about in that context. So I think that, it strikes me as if it's part of horticulture businesses offering valuable employment, part of their responsibilities as an employer, but fundamentally just picking up on what you just said then about making sure that there's a future for the business by sort of investing in people and the skills that are there. Yeah. So that, and I think that touches on a lot of the current challenges that the sector's facing. So that's great. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Evan. That was brilliant. And yeah, just a quick few words from me before we close. That I do encourage everybody that's watching this to sort of keep your eye out for future Leaders Forum events, and to join us and take advantage of the training and indeed the mentoring opportunities that are on offer. And like I said at the start, please do drop us an email. Drop the guys at Tyfu Cymru an email if you'd like to explore mentoring opportunities with Evan, or indeed any of other mentors that part of the Leaders Forum. Thanks very much.